Hello, everyone. Hope you are all fine and safe. The title of our presentation is COVID-19 Academia and Production of Knowledge in Times of Digital Platforms. I am Carolina Parreiras, anthropologist, postdoctoral researcher at University of São Paulo in Brazil. I am not a native English speaker, as you will notice. I identify myself as a woman. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am 37 years old. I am wearing a black shirt. I consider myself white, but from a Latin American point of view. I am also wearing blue glasses, and my hair is light brown with blonde highlights. I am now in Brazil, recording this video from my home office with a bunch of books behind me.
Hello, I am Juliana Valente, a PhD student in anthropology at the CUNY Graduate Center in the United States. I identify myself as a woman and use the pronouns she, her, hers. I'm 33 years old and am wearing a green turtleneck long sleeve shirt with my long brown hair tied up. I consider myself white and am against a white wall with a few decorative items such as a painting. Academia has long grappled with the issue of how to make knowledge production available and accessible to the general public. It is often accused of being distant from broader society. Its knowledge is often described as incomprehensible for a general public due to the language, the terms, and the way it is written. We find this to be quite odd because this same society is the focus of our studies. Since the 80s, anthropology has dealt with a series of critiques concerning not only the way we conduct research, but the way we represent and give voice to our collaborators. This is a question of great importance when we think of that one of the goals of ethnography is to be dialogical and multivocal. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the conditions in which academic knowledge is produced and made visible changed considerably, especially with the use of digital platforms. We have observed a recent trend to exalt this change, as people believe that in making academic production public through online platforms, it is now more accessible to broader society. This shift, however, has not considered the barriers to access and comprehension that first isolated academia, as well as the differential access and use of technology, social inequality, or even aspects related to the production of data, control, and privacy. In this talk, we will present how COVID-19 has affected Brazilian academia regarding this question. We are particularly interested in thinking about how the use of online platforms and remote talks, which we call live streaming, have made academic research more readily available. We will explore the potentials and the limits of this platform logic, situating our discussion in the Brazilian academic context. With this, we hope to provide specific nuance to this much-needed discussion.
Our approach to technology is one that doesn't categorize it a priori as good or bad. Our discussion is based on a premise that thinks of the specific and relational uses of technological devices and the internet, much as one would use other tools. In the case we are analyzing in this talk, technology is a way of blurring frontiers between academia and society, but it's also a way of establishing knowledge hierarchies and an equal distribution of technological apparatus. Furthermore, it can be a burden to academics without providing the initial benefits envisioned to this tool, for it collapses time constraints, referring to work hours, or even is a cause of stress and an overload of tasks, for example. Many studies show the negative effects of so many hours in front of screens and the ways in which women in academia have been disproportionately hindered by the effects of COVID-19. To begin, we would like to provide a brief description of key terms in the field of digital anthropology. The first is that we prefer to use the terms digital and online rather than virtual. There has been a theoretical and methodological discussion in Brazil and worldwide regarding these terms for some years, which is important to mention because the terms we chose to use are not neutral. Virtual, even when it is an enemy category, insists on the dichotomy, on the opposition between real and virtual, as if the environments and words conformed by technology and the internet are less real than analogical life. This is not true at all, and the COVID-19 is showing us this reality every day. Today, it is quite impossible to separate our life from technology. That is why we prefer to think of technology and the internet as embedded, embodied, and everyday, following the inspiration of Christine Hein. We also wanted to provide a comparative description of the context for these live streaming events in the US context. Many academic events taking place online occur on paid platforms and require prior registration. In order to participate in a public talk at a given university, one must first sign up for the talk and then receive the link to the Zoom, GoToWebinar, and other platforms, which cannot be shared publicly. In this sense, events continue to have a private aspect, even if their recordings are later broadcasted on YouTube or other unpaid platforms. During the events, participants are generally asked to keep their microphones off until a question and answer session is open. In other formats, like Zoom webinars, the questions are only available in the form of text, maintaining the strict separation between lecture and public, trying to mimic analogical lectures maybe. Users can choose to keep their personal cameras on or off. Some platforms allow for users to write comments and questions while the talk is occurring. This might be visible to all other participants or sent directly to a moderator, depending on the platform being used. Users can stream these talks on their phones, computers, and other devices, but are generally expected to minimally interact with other users and the host. On the other hand, many events and talks in Brazil are taking places on unpaid platforms that generally stream live to the public. These include live streaming over Instagram or YouTube. One does not have to sign up for the event. A link is provided in the calls for the talk or using QR codes. On these platforms, one might watch a live show anonymously. Interactions generally occur in the chat section and are available for all other users to see. Some of these events are then saved onto the platform or made available for a few hours and then deleted. As users do not see each other, there are no issues regarding microphones and cameras. Users can choose to stream these events on their phones while they perform other activities. The event functions much as a TV. And of course, you can stream YouTube on your TV. Multitasking seems quite common, an aspect of life that technology is exacerbating, even when we are talking about work. It is important to note, and Professor Marco Tossig reminds us about this when commenting about radio storytelling in a recent lecture, that when listening to radio, our mind becomes more flexible, and I am quoting him, to change and flux. Although he didn't mention digital platforms, the logic seems to be the same. You can do many other things while watching the numerous lives and webinars. The setting is not one of an intimate event. Rather, there is a sense of speaking to the world, make information available for everyone interested to access. There is a current joke among academics in Brazil that everything has become a live streaming event, making it quite impossible to keep track of the schedule of these events. But there is something important to notice. The concept of participation, already a much discussed one in studies on for of technology and the internet is being reconfigured with the use of platforms like YouTube and associated with academic work. People who watch these live events and participate through the live chat device ask questions, share personal experiences, and sometimes these comments are shared on the live streaming screen, making this another reconfiguration of participation. So it seems urgent to reflect upon this kind of participation academia is envisioning. Is it more democratic because it is free to attend and you can be anywhere in the world? Is it, is it really attracting not only a huge amount of people, but persons from different areas, not only academic? What is the meaning of this change? Can we talk about a more democratic academia? Or should we be more careful in making these assumptions? It is exactly this sensation that we would like to explore for the remainder of our presentation. Is this form of sharing information, research, and knowledge truly a way to make academic knowledge available to everyone? This is why we propose to think about digital inequality and the importance of taking into account how the various social markers of difference, especially social class, age, race, and gender, affect true possibilities of access and participation in online academic events. There is a general sense of connectedness expressed during these events. Many times, users will comment on how happy they are to be able to listen to a class or participate in a workshop or lecture led by prestigious educational institutions in metropolitan regions of Brazil, an opportunity they might not ever have otherwise. However, conditions of access are highly unequal. In the case of Brazil, a recent research made public in June 2020, ICT households, what we call in Portuguese, chique domicílios, shows that in the last years we had an increase in the number of people with some type of access to the internet and to technological devices. However, this process is unequal. For example, 20 millions of households don't have any type of access to the internet, and most part of them are in classes D and E. And 47 millions of persons don't have any kind of access at all. If we think about the distribution of connections to the internet among social classes, in classes A and B, we have 99 of them connected. In classes D and E, this number drops to 50%. Another important data is that cell phones are the most used devices. 99% of the sample of the research use cell phone for access to the internet. And for 58% of them, cell phones are the only device available to access, as well as limited 3G, 4G networks. What this data tells us is that we are dealing with a country with huge index of social inequality, which is translated to digital inequality, especially if we think about social class and income layers. And race, we would risk saying, since in Brazil, race inequality usually coincides with class inequality. So the conditions of access, both in terms of socioeconomic possibilities of having a device and connection to the internet, and in what we can call digital literacy, the knowledge of how to access and use digital platforms and the technological devices are unequal. Nevertheless, this general sense of connectedness does not account for the reality of a large part of Brazilian population. Even in academic settings, the conditions to access and use of technology are not the same for everyone. Of course, we have to think about the participation, the occurrence of this amount of live streaming, the initiatives that are trying to question and blur the frontiers of the knowledge that we produce inside universities. But we have to keep in mind that this process is different and far from equal.
Finally, we wanted to discuss the question of the hierarchy of knowledge and the social and political effects of this move to online lectures. We observe that though these events attempt to open the university and make its work available to the general public for free through video and audio, rather than the written text, they still cater to a specific audience of academics in its language, ideas, and presentations. Brazil has seen a backlash to scientific and academic work in the last few years, heightened by Bolsonaro's election and office. There is a general sense that academia must be defended, and that the best way to do so is to inform people of what is being produced in this setting. Unfortunately, this attitude of wanting to take academic knowledge to those less informed further isolates universities from the general public, as Gupta and Ferguson have pointed out in their book published in 1997 called Anthropological Locations. The task is not to, and I quote, share knowledge with those who lack it, but forge links between different knowledges that are possible from different locations, and to trace lines of possible alliances and shared purpose between them, end quote. In Brazil, much inspired by the authors from the Ontological turn, this conversation has centered not on recognizing a commonality amongst voices, but rather of seeking equity. All epistemologies must be recognized as such, with unique cosmologies and points of view that have equal importance and standing with academic knowledge. Researchers such as José Carlos dos Anjos and Márcio Goldman, for example, have been important in thinking of the relationship and exchanges between academia and Afro-Brazilian religious knowledge, creating a shift in epistemic views. Authors outside of anthropology, such as Davi Kopenawa, who writes about indigenous epistemologies and cosmologies, or Luis Rufino, who considers epistemologies from Afro-Brazilian religions through a pedagogic lens, have been important for informing this change in epistemic view. In the United States, this conversation regarding anthropology's role in the public has turned to terms such as activist anthropology, engaged anthropology, and public anthropology, highly discussed and contested terms that involve particular histories, stands, and understandings of academic knowledge production and sharing. Recent publications of edited volumes, such as If Truth Be Told by Didier Fassin, published in 2017, and Public Anthropology in the Borderless World by Sam Beck and Carl Maida, published in 2015, point to some of the limits and challenges of these frameworks and attempts. Nevertheless, there is a general consensus that what is produced within a university setting should not and will not remain within its walls. As Fassin suggests, ethnography has an afterlife. However, as we stated throughout this lecture, to simply provide information on online platforms that are open to users does not make knowledge accessible. There is a need to inherently change the language and the way academics engage with the public. There's a need to better connect with the interests and the needs of the targeted audience. In order to reach a plurality of listeners, one must provide a plurality of voices. Therefore, we question if live streaming in numerous events opens up academic settings, or if they are only a temporary fix to a pandemic, creating digital academic spaces of exchange, which are really important in and of themselves, but do not necessarily solve the problem of lack of access and coded knowledge. This is because, on the other hand, events targeted at other academic peers or which open opportunities for exchange are important, as can be seen in exclamations by people across the country at being able to share space online while listening to a speaker. There is value in using online platforms for collaboration. In fact, the two authors in this talk are in different countries, yet collaborate and participate in events together, providing greater connection between what is being produced in academia in the United States and in Brazil. Serious exchange is important for the growth of academic knowledge. How can we use the lessons learned from the last few months to create opportunities for exchange amongst peers that do not share the same geographic space? In conclusion, in order for academic exchange to be meaningful, the choice of platforms, formats, and speakers must be clear and purposeful, guided by reasonable objectives. It is important to qualify the platforms, not taking for granted that everyone has the same understanding of how to use them or even the same means to access them. The COVID-19 pandemic is making us deal with the phenomena that already was in place before, the platformization of life, or the paradigm of the platform according to Casilli and Posada. But we have to keep in mind that the conditions of access are unequal, that this amount of online activities can become a burden and a cause of stress, and that there are a lot of issues concerning the use of our data, control, and privacy. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to deal with this in our presentation. Furthermore, we question, what are the different uses of our ethnographic work beyond the walls of academia, in addition to questioning what it means to produce knowledge through meaningful exchange with the societies in which the research is conducted? So we end with, how can we use technology in our favor to create accessible and meaningful forms of exchange without forgetting and leaving aside the long history of thought in anthropology regarding its role outside of academia?